This week on The Pitching Well, our special guest, editor-at-large of IR Magazine, Neil Stewart. All that and more coming up. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining us. Our special guest today is Neil Stewart, editor-at-large of Investor Relations Magazine. If you haven't seen it in a while, it's quite slick. Full disclosure, I wrote a column for the magazine many years ago. Glad to see you again. Now, you've been in the IR space writing here for 15 years. You've seen a lot of changes in practices. You've seen good IR. You've seen bad IR. What trends are you seeing right now that are most relevant?
Well, we're seeing a continuing trend, and it's something that's been going on slowly the whole 15 years I've been in the space. And that's IR went from a communications function to a real strategic one. Okay, this is not a job of pushing press releases or just giving out numbers. The IRO now is like a right-hand man to the CEO.
Investor Relations Officer, for anyone who don't follow the details as closely as we do.
That's it. Building a diverse and stable shareholder base, watching out for risks like activists or takeover threats for that matter, or simply downtrends in the stock. These are key roles now that are right up in the boardroom, in the C-suite, and right next to the CEO, very close to the CEO's heart.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of our viewers are with small caps. How do they get the attention these days of someone like you? Because after all, they don't have analyst coverage. They're not invited to appear on CNBC. How do they get coverage?
You know, I once had a good lesson taught to me by a small cap company I went to visit in Japan. I thought this was a great example. This was in the early days of IR websites. In fact, Japan was behind the US and the rest of the world in introducing IR websites. But this company had a good one, even though it was a small cap. And I said, well, how did you get inspiration? Where did you look to figure out how to do a good website? And this young investor relations officer at a Japanese small cap said, oh, I looked at Intel and Microsoft and Cisco. And I thought, isn't that great? Like, even a small cap could reach for the best. And so the fact is that any company looking for attention, I suggest you start by looking at the best no matter what scale or size they are. And those are some of the best. Companies like Intel or GE or Microsoft, Cisco, what they do is fantastic in terms of all their communications, the visibility of their CEO, their transparency, their openness, their responsiveness to investors. So those are all things that a company of any size can start to do, is to have the right attitude and to be open to their shareholders as owners and their investors as having a real say and voice in the running of the company.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about what you shouldn't do. I mean, let's face it, I'm sure you get pitched by press releases every day, maybe some that even appear to be a little pumpy and dumpy, shall we say. What is it that turns you off when you see a press release from an investor relations officer and you think, oh, how in the world? What were they thinking when they sent this?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, what you suggest is that spin, salesy hype, I've had it called by investors and analysts, is a definite no-no. They don't like it. But it's actually pretty far down the list in terms of mistakes in investor relations. And I'm not just talking about press releases or, say, your IR website. I'm talking about the real guts of IR, which is one-on-one interaction, okay? And we survey analysts and investors. We ask them who does the best IR and why, and we've even asked them who does the worst IR and why. And some of the answers are pretty shocking. Actually, the number one complaint is probably pretty obvious, and it should be obvious, but not everyone gets it right. And that is a lack of responsiveness. You know, investor relations officers think that their most important qualities are things like their communication skills and their financial knowledge. Frankly, if they can answer phone messages and respond to emails, they're 90% of the way there.
But I leave a phone message at 4:50 on Thursday. I don't want to wait till Monday to get the call returned.
That's absolutely right. And the best IROs in the business will have policies like, for example, a 3-hour rule. Every inquiry has to be responded to within 3 hours. But the number two biggest complaint, and in fact I'd put it at number one because it's the seriousness of this complaint, and that is what I call a bad attitude. And this is like a sickness, it's like a plague, it's rot in corporate America, frankly. And that is the attitude on behalf of CEOs, of top management and boards of directors, that somehow the investor is the enemy. that they have to fight with the shareholders, that there's complaints of arrogance and of being condescending, of being just frankly not transparent and closed to interest. You know, some IR teams make it seem like they're doing some big favor for the investor when they give out some information. This is just wrong, and to me, that's probably the worst problem, the worst mistake in investor relations.
So who's doing it well? One of the things I have fond memories of with IR Magazine is your fabulous award banquets every year, and you do a wonderful job of spotlighting those who do well. Who's doing it right, and can you give any specific case studies of problems they had and how they handled it well?
Okay, well, here's the interesting thing, and it's something we see in our awards throughout the years. The companies that do the best in our awards, and this is just simply a survey of analysts and investors. We say who's doing it best and why. The companies that do it best are the ones that have been having a tough time. Okay, this is not a stock price beauty contest. Investors and analysts don't just vote for whoever they like best because they've made the most returns and made them the most money. So I'll give you an example. This year, our 3 winners in the 3 market cap ranges. In the large cap, Covidien, a healthcare company, healthcare equipment, lousy time for healthcare, right? Between the healthcare reform and all the cutbacks in state spending in Europe, they are in a bad position. But investors admire the job they're doing in staying communicative and staying transparent.
It's easy to return someone's call when there's nothing but good news to talk about, right?
Well, that's what they say. To stay open during tough times is the best accomplishment a company can make. Mid-cap range,
then when you've got the good news and you make a call, people are happy to take your call then. But when you didn't return their call 6 months ago, like, I'm not going to return his call now.
Absolutely.
That's the attitude, right?
Far more credible when you do return those calls in good times and bad. Very highly praised quality is consistency. So again, in good times and bad. Mid-cap range, Aeropostale, a teen retailer, tough time last year, excellent investor relations. And in the small cap range, Jack in the Box, the restaurant chain. Again, this is not a good time for restaurants for that kind of spending. They had a tough year, but they have a first-class IRO in the form of Carol DiRemo, who has been at Applebee's in the past, won lots of awards there, and has started to win lots of awards.
What does she do? What can our small cap viewers learn about what Carol's doing?
The thing about Carol is that she is as good, if not better, than just about any analyst in her space, okay? So when it comes to Jack in the Box, who's the #1 analyst, the #1 best analyst, who knows more than anybody and can talk about that company's story? It's Carol DiRemo. Analysts and investors say that talking to her is just like talking to the CFO or the CEO. It's like she is the true voice of the company.
Well, more with Neil in a moment. For those of you watching us on iTunes, YouTube, and a few other places, we have to sign off now. If you want to watch the entire program, go to pitchingwell.com and you can see the show in its entirety. We'll be back in just a moment.